So, good afternoon, evening, weekend, everyone. It's amazing to have Sam here today to do a session that, due to bad management of online events, we weren't able to do at our event before Christmas. And I've had a little sneak peek, and this was the one thing actually over Christmas that I just kept thinking, must talk to Sam and make sure we get this done. So I'm very, very pleased.
Cool, thank you. First thing to say is sorry to Phil ED, who was mid-flow when we all moved to this room. So sorry, Phil, but hopefully there'll be a chance to chat afterwards. I have some slides, but this is in no way a formal kind of presentation. This is some thoughts that I had that I thought I would share. And it's nice that I've got a nice friendly group of people to do that with. So thank you for coming. The presentation is pretty much, I've called it Experiments in Work Wellbeing. Hopefully that will make sense as we move through, but I'll explain as we move through. I think that's the best thing to do. I usually start with a hello to tell you who I am, but you probably know already. So I work at MHCLG in the local digital collaboration unit. At the moment, I'm just working on a different project that I can't talk about, but I am still in the LDCU mostly, so I know most of you from there. And this is me on Twitter. So if you want to find me, that's where I am. So one of the things that I was thinking about was, I think pretty much everyone on this call works in digital or some flavor of digital. And I was thinking about how we operate when we're doing Agile and how we use test, learn and iterate to manage our project process. And I started thinking about this test, learn, iterate and how much value I ascribe in my working life to that learning process, and it being a process and it not having a fixed end point necessarily, but something that we keep improving on. And I started wondering why we don't apply similar processes to our personal lives and our kind of non-work lives. So this is kind of what I'm thinking about. You may have already seen this as well, but when the pandemic hit this last year, there was a lot of people talking about, this is a massive change to how we operate and how it changes a lot about the future, and people are having to deal with a lot. This is the KublerRoss change curve, which you might have heard of. And essentially it kind of talks you through the process of going through a change and what that looks like. So it goes from shock through frustration through to depression, so when you're really, really low because of the shock of something happening, and then gradually coming out of the change at the other side. I think we're all in a bit of a depression at the moment because of COVID and because of everything that's going on, and that is completely logical. I also just generally hang around this space, and I have suffered with anxiety and depression for pretty much all my adult life, I'm going to say. So I started thinking about ways that you can kind of come out of that and how we might come out of this pandemic change that's happening and the slump and depression that we're feeling. And the next thing on the KublerRoss change curve is experiment. So if we think back to test, learn, iterate, essentially the KublerRoss change curve is telling us that in order to get out of a depression, we need to experiment our way out of it. We need to kind of try some new things, make a decision about how to move forward, and that's how we'll deal with the change. Similarly, I was thinking about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and this is just a really basic diagram of some of the things that you go through in CBT, which is it basically tries to get you out of a cycle of bad thinking or bad activities that are kind of not serving you and not helping your well-being. And these things are all sort of interlinked, but they do kind of spiral around. So our thoughts affect our behaviors affect our emotions affect our behaviors. And all of this is kind of learning and testing and trying new things and moving forward and hopefully getting our well-being back into a good shape. So I started thinking, what would happen if I started taking this approach of testing and experimenting for my well-being? What would happen if? This is my favorite GIF in the world. So a very quick story about stickers, which I know you will all know about, but in government we absolutely love stickers. And it seems like a really long time ago now I made these stickers, because I've given out hundreds of them since. But when I first created them, I felt really, really uncertain about what I was doing, why I was doing it, like what I would get out of creating a sticker and then giving it to someone. And in my head, I thought, these people are going to think I'm so presumptuous and so pompous and so up myself that I'm going to give them a sticker. Like, who do I think I am? I carried these stickers around in my bag for several weeks before I gave any to anybody. And then when I did, everyone was very happy. Everyone was like, this is a great sticker, I really like this, and really pleased to have been given something and just like happy to have received like a present that they weren't expecting. And it sort of got me thinking again, you know, I made all these assumptions about what people would think of me, and they turned out to be entirely the opposite. And it actually turned out to be something that really helped me to like move forward and start being who I wanted to be at work. So it's about changing our behaviors so that or the way that I was thinking made my behavior so that I wasn't going to give any stickers to anyone. But the minute I changed my behavior and I did give my stickers to someone, it changed my thought process. So we're kind of trying and we're learning and we're testing and we're kind of moving forward from there. And it turns out as well, just as a side note, that there's something very altruistic in giving people stuff. And you might have seen already in Agile, like we might have cards similar to these ones. There's a link there if you want to buy them, but they're basically like kudos cards that say you did a great thing, that was really cool. Because actually just doing something nice for someone and explaining something and sending something through the post rather than in an email or something is actually really good for not just their well-being, but also yours. It turns out altruism is actually good for your mental health. So giving stickers, more stickers. Let's do more stickers. So when I started putting together the presentation, I started thinking, how can I structure this in a way that will make sense to other people? And so I started writing down some of the rules that I've come across. Now, like, we can have a conversation. I don't think these rules are going to be the same for everyone, but these are the things that I've learned. So that sticker story told me that I had made up rules for myself about how I acted that weren't true at all. And so I need to be able to find those rules. So find those times when I'm saying, I can't do this, everyone will think I'm, or that's impossible, those kinds of things, and subvert them or work out a way to experiment my way out of them. And then I'll be able to move forward. So the next thing I was going to talk about was just about my wall, which is in front of me at the moment. I've taken a lot of the stuff down because we're moving house soon. But this is a picture of my desk I'm very lucky to have an office in my house. So this is a picture of my desk. And essentially I started recognizing that, and you might have encountered this too, especially with working from home, but I had no idea whether I was being productive or not. I didn't really know what productive was for me. And I found it really hard to keep track of what I was achieving, if I was achieving anything. And so I started keeping this wall of Post-it notes to kind of remind myself of the work that I've been doing and what I'd achieved. So the first thing is, and if you're doing an agile digital project as well, we can't record how far we've come unless we've baselined something. So we can't take really good success metrics unless we know where we've come from. So my second experiment has been to keep that wall and to keep track of my activities and my achievements and all the things I'm learning, so that I can remind myself of them and so that I can come back to it later and see how far I've come. That is a close-up of my wall. I don't know why you need that one. The other thing that I've started to learn to do for my well-being is to learn to say no. And that's really not an easy thing to do in some circumstances. But I've learned that, I have to set some boundaries for my own mental health. So I started doing this quite a long time ago, just setting my out of office to tell people and give people a heads up that I was not going to get back to them. I've seen other people doing similar to this, like sending out of offices saying, I'm on holiday, I'm not going to read your email. In fact, I'm going to delete it when I get back. I think that's maybe a bit far, but I started kind of working out how I could hold those boundaries and how I could kind of share what was going on for me and manage people's expectations. So I've had various different versions of this out of office. There's one on at the moment that just says, I've got some holiday, I'm going to get back to you it'll take me longer than normal. And it's about being able to say no, or at least not right now, to an email when it comes in. But more than that, I learned that that's kind of okay, but it's also after the fact. So if someone sent you something really urgent and then they get you out of office, it doesn't really help them. So I've started to give people a heads up before I have to say no. So So I've started using the footer on my emails to give people a heads up of what might be going on so that they know what to expect from me before it happens. And this is like an example of one that I've used before. Because I have a little boy, I often work quite late or at the weekend to catch up with things. So this is an example of where I've used it to show, please don't think that I want a response on a Saturday if I'm working. But I've changed this a few times as well to say, like, I'm really busy right now, so it might still take me a while to get back to you or similar. And so on that, I think that's the example of like using tools or identifying tools that you have at work, like your email out of office, like your calendar, like different bits and pieces to help protect yourself from some of the things that might be triggering, like those urgent emails that might come in, like kind of people's expectations not being managed in terms of how quickly you can respond to them, those kinds of things. So find and use those tools wherever you can. The next one is for my work wellbeing. I know that one of the things that is a trigger for me is when I feel like I've not been understood, or I feel like people don't know what it is I'm working on or what my objectives are. So my next kind of rule for myself is to over-communicate. And by that, I don't mean tell everyone what you had for dinner last night, or is that over-communicating? Maybe like oversharing. It's not the same as oversharing, but it's maybe explaining and explaining again and having that kind of ability to keep coming back to it. So one of the things I started doing was to use Trello to just make a note of absolutely everything I was doing. Like, this is a daily checklist of all of the activities I'm doing. And it also serves to give people a really quick view of where the stuff that I'm working on is, so that they can find it easily if I'm not available. And that is mostly I use it as a checklist for myself, but it is also to provide people with an overview so they can see, what are my priorities for a particular day? What have I done that day? What have I been doing? And to kind of also demystify my working practice and what I'm up to. I think especially being at home, it's really hard to see what anyone is filling their day with. It would be really easy to assume that people are twiddling their thumbs, maybe not in local government, but maybe in central government. So this is a kind of way to tell myself, yes, I am making progress on a daily basis. And yes, people understand what I'm doing, which is good for me. And then if we're thinking about testing, one of the things I've done a few times is to use my networks to test an idea if I'm trying to work through something, I'll put something on Twitter asking a question, or I'll go to some people that I trust on my WhatsApp or something, and I will ask a question and say, what might I do about this? I'm thinking about doing this. How would that work? And I think when we're testing, it's not just for us to test and see how we feel, but it's also to test with other people and get those views back from people. So this was something that I kind of started because I had lots of post-it notes that were really interesting around my room. You can see probably some of them, but I wanted to kind of work out how to take my thoughts on some of those things forward, and so I used Twitter to do it. And again, I shared all of that in the open as well, just to be really clear. So yeah, when we're talking about testing with our networks, really, really important, and testing, you know, what's worked for other people and how they're working with their well-being. So what is the question? I have put all of this in front of you, not because, like I said before, I think these are universal rules that will help you with your well-being. But what I did think was, in the past year, we've heard it all. We've heard, go out for a jog, make sure you go for a walk, are you drinking enough water, be kind to yourself. All of the well-being advice that's out there is totally valid and will help you. But it's also generalized and it doesn't feel personal. So the reason for telling you all of this stuff now is because it is really personal to me, and it's stuff that has genuinely helped me as I've been trying to kind of make myself more comfortable at work and help my mental health at work. So these were the rules that I made up. So identify and subvert the rules is the first one. Keep track, learn to say no, learn to give people a heads up, use tools to protect yourself, over-communicate, and test with your networks. So the one thing I would like you to take away, if you take anything away from this, is to identify that I've given you a load of rules and go away and subvert all of the rules. But the key thing for me is, if we're going to put anything else in there, is reflect. So when we're testing, when we're learning, when we're iterating, when we're changing, building in that time to reflect and to understand what's working for us and what's not working for us. Like having someone tell you to drink however many pints of water is not, like, in a day is fine. But if you're just trying to do that mindlessly with not any kind of thought behind it, you might not stick to it. But if you reflect on the days when you've drunk 4 pints of water compared to the days when you haven't, then you might decide, actually, that thing worked for me and I'm going to keep doing it. So I've added an extra little spiral, but in reality, you probably want to reflect all the time, all the way through. Reflect, reflect, reflect. Yes, that's what I've just said. And that is literally it. That is the presentation. Ramshackle, quick ride through some of the things that I've done for my mental health. But thank you for listening. And Andy, I don't know what you want to do now. I'll stop sharing my screen and we can all come back.
Brilliant, Sam. Thank you. That was amazing. I love it. These are the rules, and now subvert them. I was just actually tweeting that at the moment. So we've got one question at the moment, and we'd love more questions. And because I know Neil is such a shrinking violet, I'm going to get him to ask his question in person. And if anyone else wants to ask Sam anything, well, not anything, obviously, that's a bit broad. But, you know, if anyone wants to ask Sam a question direct, please do just raise your hand and I will hoik you up here. And I'm desperately worried that Neil has not turned up. So I'm just going to undo him and redo him. If not, oh, I think that's my fault, Neil. He might have taken the moment to go to the loo. So here we go.
I'd be waiting all week if I was.
That's oversharing, mate.
Oh, damn. I was bad at that. So one of the things I reflected on as you were going through that, they were very, very personal things that you were doing. And I just wondered how you had colleagues help you or what you asked them to do. Because we tend to do a lot of sharing and saying how we are and just sort of communicating to each other, but also looking out for each other and asking each other. So I just wondered how much of that helps you, or if that figures in your.
Yeah, so for me, and partly this presentation, I think, is about like finding some of that personal empowerment to do it rather than relying on others. Having conversations about mental health at work, even though I think we're getting a lot better, it's still really hard. And actually, like, when we talk about how we've normalized mental health conversations, we haven't always normalized what it really means, if that makes sense. We're kind of okay with people saying how they're feeling, but it doesn't go all that much further than that into like, well, how is this affecting you? Like, how is there anything we can do? And so I sometimes find that those conversations at work can still be quite shallow. Not that people don't care about one another. I'm absolutely sure that they do, but it's really hard, and it's even harder when you can't see people. There are some things that we've tried, like actually when I was working with the One Team Gov community, we would always have a check-in before like stand-ups or calls that we had to say, this is what I'm coming to the call with today, this is how I'm feeling. And that definitely helped. And similarly, like I found in our team, just booking a half hour with people and saying, you know, let's just get together and chat for half hour, and giving people permission to not have to talk about work for half an hour has been really helpful. But yeah, I mean, I think having a great team around you is really, really useful. But there is also a massive part of this that is deeply, deeply personal and deeply reliant on finding your own motivations. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. I think you're so right, Sam. How that mental health conversation goes depends so much on your managers and stuff like that. It's all too easy to flip into, someone's mentioned mental health, I'll now get the HR guidance off the shelf and we'll now go through that and do the appropriate referrals and all stuff like that, which is great, but you know, it's not what most people are looking for out of that conversation. I don't think, personally. It's, oh, there we go, we got a policy on the shelf, and I don't think you can write a policy on mental health, to be honest, because it's not like one thing. Does anybody want to raise their hand? I can't believe all of you lot in the room who I all know. There we go. Sorry, whilst John is making his way to the stage, Helen asked, do you find seeing faces even virtually helps?
Yeah, it definitely does. But I think that as the longer this goes on, the more we realise that it's those serendipitous moments that we miss the most. So, you know, one of the things that I think makes having virtual meetings so hard is because you know everyone who's there, and you see their faces like that all the time, and it doesn't allow for those kind of serendipitous conversations or like water cooler conversations. It definitely helps to be able to see people, but it is also like, it isn't the same, is it? In the room. What's going on in the Q&A? What are you up to?
I've no idea what Neil's going
on.
I'm going to say a massive, massive thanks to Sam. I think that was so good. And so important at the moment, I think, to have this. It's kind of the reason I think this idea of having some sort of just meet up where people can just chat, I think it's just so important.